Our speaker this morning is, as I said before, past District Governor Rick Manganello. Rick's earliest memory in life was at the age of 3, saluting the flag each evening at retreat at the Army post where he lived. He finds flag burning reprehensible, but defends people's rights for free expression. Later in life, Rick's high school years were on post-war Okinawa, where people were struggling to reconstruct their lives after the conquest, first by the Japanese and then by the Americans. They had survived the shock and awe of the largest, most devastating artillery barrage in battle in world history, and desperately wanted peace. He gained an abiding respect for how countless innocent people can be caught up in devastating circumstances through no fault of their own, powerless to avoid them, and in this regard, he sees little difference between Okinawans, Syrians, or Central Americans, and the duty of all people to help. His first job out of college was as a wing mechanical engineer on a Titan II ICBM, and he feels that makes him a rocket scientist. More importantly, it means he's grounded in international conflict and understands the vital role military strength plays in keeping us safe, while Rotarians and like-minded people find ways to build peace. He completed his career in the United States Air Force in 1988, founding an aerospace company supporting the U.S. military and NATO, and he continues as its board chairman, but is hoping to divest and retire soon. He joined the Rotary Club of Nashua in 1997, served as a president in the 2002-2003 year, and served in a variety of positions inside and outside of the club. He served as district governor in the 2010-2011 year, a job made only possible with the help of his fabulous wife of 50 years, Janet. Congratulations. Wow. His daughter Linda has become an awesome 6th grade teacher at the Pennachuck Middle School, and his son is the owner and pitmaster of the Riverside Barbecue in Nashua. Did not know that. And Rick and Janet enjoy their 4 almost grown grandchildren, and they travel constantly, usually with some type of Rotary tie-in. So with that, I give you past District Governor Rick Manganello.
Good morning, Merrimack. I always love to visit this club because you've got such great friendship and camaraderie. You do such great things in your community and the world. It's just always a pleasure to be with you. I'm a Rotary junkie by nature. Been in 20 years this month and having a heck of a time. Now, Paul asked me to come and talk to you about the Rotary Foundation. But it's impossible to talk about the Rotary Foundation without also talking about Rotary, because the two are really one and the same. The Rotary Foundation is our foundation. All of its funding comes from us. We don't get outside money. We try to get some. Anybody who's willing to give, we're happy to take it. But you know, the preponderance comes from eeach of you. 1.2 million Rotarians contributing, becoming Paul Harris Fellows, and moving up in various ways. And it's just a fabulous foundation. So on the input side, it's funded by us. On the output side, what it does, virtually everything it does, is for us. All of the programs of the Rotary Foundation, we'll talk about them in a bit, are really directed at the clubs and what clubs want to do. So, now as a Rotary junkie, I get to meet lots of great Rotarians. I meet in clubs, and clubs are where it's at. Clubs are the best place to be. But there's a lot of work goes on beyond clubs and working up. Troy has mentioned Ian Risley, our current president, and it's been my pleasure to meet a great many of those presidents over time. And one of the ones that I like the best is his past president, Cliff Doctrum, from the Rotary Club of Moraga, California. I first met Cliff when I did a makeup at the Rotary Club of Chicago, Club number 1. Big fancy hotel in Chicago, pretty good sized group, several hundred people. And Cliff was the speaker. I'd never heard of him. And he got up and gave a talk, and it's been kind of a life-changing talk. So I'd like to share with you a true story that Cliff offered at that meeting, because I think it helps us understand Rotary and understand ourselves. You know, President Cliff looked out at the audience and he said, or he asked a question. He says, "When did you become a Rotarian?" Well, this is back in 2005, and I'm thinking, I joined in August of 1997, yeah. Okay, and then Cliff goes on to kind of burst that bubble, because all of us were thinking in those terms. He says, no, 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 no. Not when did you join a Rotary club, when did you become a Rotarian? Because there's a huge difference. All of us have known club members for years that never quite became Rotarians, never quite got it, never quite lit up. And we've known plenty of people in our community and our lives that are really Rotarians even though they never joined a Rotary club. So to illustrate his point, President Cliff goes on to tell the true story that originated in the Rotary Club of Houston. Now, in those days, Houston was one of the really big clubs in Rotary, 500 plus members, all three-piece suits, the captains of industry in that great city, and very big and important people. And the club had an active community service project, and they expected all of the club members to participate. Well, one day the club's president went to a particular member, let's call him Tom, and the president asked, Tom, I need a favor. There's a sick boy in the poor part of our town, and we need to send somebody to pick him up and just take him to the county hospital to get some treatment. Could you please do that for us? Well, says Tom, I've got a big company to run. I got a lot of people depending on me. I'm really pretty busy. Could you please get somebody else to go take the kid to the hospital? Well, the club's president thought a moment, and he finally said, well, you're very busy, Tom, and so am I, but if you can't do this one little thing for me, maybe I should spend some of my time finding out how to get you out of our club. Well, said Tom, when you put it that way, I'll go. Well, a few minutes later, Tom found himself in a part of Houston where he'd not been before, and he wasn't at all comfortable. There was trash along the sides of the streets, bars on some of the windows. Yeah, he was feeling the pinch a little bit as he drove his Cadillac up and parked in front of a three-story tenement. Tom went in, worked his way up 2 dimly lit flights of stairs to the 3rd floor, knocked on a door. A small Mexican woman opened the door, and behind her on a well-worn couch, Tom could see a young boy that clearly needed some medical attention. So he explained why he was there. He took the boy by his sticky finger and walked him down those 2 dimly lit flights of stairs, set him on the front seat of his Cadillac, just about as far from the driver's side as he could possibly manage. And he headed off toward the county hospital. Well, they'd only gone a couple of blocks when the boy turned to Tom and said, Mister, are you God? Why, no, boy, replied Tom. Why did you ask? He says, because my mother was on her knees praying to God when you knocked on our door. Well, Tom was silent as they drove on to the hospital, took the boy in and entered him into a room with 2 other boys that were looking pretty miserable in this strange place. And he left. But he didn't go back to that busy office. He went to a toy store. He bought 3 of the biggest teddy bears he could find and returned to that ward. And he watched as those apprehensive youngsters smiled and received probably the best gift they'd ever gotten. Still, he didn't go back to that busy office of his. He went to a grocery store and he bought bread and milk and other staples, went back to that tenement and walked up those stairs and presented them to this woman. Then he went back to the office, but he picked up the phone and he called the club president and said, Mr. President, there's poverty and problems in this town of ours, and we're not doing enough about it. Start a committee, and I'll be its chair. That was the day that Tom became a Rotarian. That's the day he understood it was more than just club meetings and friends and business and other things. It was service. And it was personal service with your hearts engaged. And so Tom learned that vital lesson that day, that Rotary's about giving back and using the talents and the benefits that we've all received. And if you think about it, most of us joined Rotary because it was a group of business people, a group of friends, a unique circle of people we could be involved with and that we could talk with and that we could enjoy their company. When we're not here to sell to each other, but we are here to learn from each other and to support each other. That's the kind of thing that typically brings us in, but the kind of thing that keeps us coming back and keeps us in for 20 years, and I'm just a warm-up act. I know you've got guys in this club 2.5 times that, I'm sure. So what a great organization. What a fabulous thing to belong to. Now, where does the Rotary Foundation fit into all of this? You know, I've really got, after all this time I spend in Rotary and being a junkie, I've got the worst job in Rotary. And I've also got the best job in Rotary, both at the same time. Why in the world is that? Well, the reason is I have two bosses. Ian Risley, Troy introduced to you, is one of my bosses. And I respect Ian. My other boss is you. The 60 Rotary clubs here in District 7870, the 2,400 Rotarians, all having that great experience together. Now, for Mr. Risley, he thinks my job is to come in here with my tin cup and fleece you guys and ask for money. And I hate asking for money. I really do. I am not a fundraiser or developer. And, you know, you work hard for your money, and it's yours, and it's for you to decide how to spend. But the best job in Rotary is the same job, because I get to come to your clubs and work with your clubs day in and day out, helping you spend that money, helping you understand what the Rotary Foundation does, why the Rotary Foundation is worthy of your contribution of your hard-earned money. And particularly global grants, that's the best. That's the very best. You know, in the past 4 years, I've been the foundation chair, and this district has participated in 23 global grants. Well, 23 grants, 3 of them district, and the rest global grants. Working in Mongolia, Nicaragua, Honduras, Uganda, and many other places. And all taking your money and multiplying it for the benefit of your programs. What are the 3 programs that the Rotary Foundation does? Let's interact a little bit here. Who can tell me what the Rotary Foundation does? You all know. Pure water. Pure water. Pure water. Okay, I heard polio. Polio's a good one. I heard pure water. What else? Well, there is, and that's the fund we like to tap into so it can help do our projects. Okay, there's a third program. Okay, literacy's a good one. You can name lots and lots of those things, all of which will lump under the heading of grants. But the first thing the foundation does is Polio Plus. Okay, 60% of the foundation's spending is on Polio Plus. To put it in a context, Rotarians around the world every year raise and spend about $1 billion on humanitarian projects. And since all clubs are local, most of that money gets spent right where it's raised. The preponderance of your funds get spent in Merrimack, as you'd expect. If you're in Cairo, the preponderance of your funds gets spent right there in Egypt. So that's a normal aspect. But that's about $1 billion a year. That's pretty amazing stuff. Now, the Rotary Foundation comes along and spends another $150 million. It's not the main event, but it's sure not chump change. And if you use it right, a lot of that money can be spent on the things that you want to do, and that's very important. So 60% of what the foundation does is polio eradication. We started that in 1985, been at it ever since. We thought it was going to be a $150 million program and take several years. Now we've been at it for a couple of decades. We've got $1.3 billion in it right now as Rotarians, but we have leveraged other investors like Gates and the Centers for Disease Control and the government of India, who are the other 3 big contributors. So far the world has put over $13 billion in. Pretty good leverage on our investment, don't you think? We came up with 1.5 or 1.3. The rest of the world came up with another 12 or 13. That's a lot. That's another $1 billion to get this job done. When we started back in 1987, there were 125 countries that had endemic polio. It was a scourge. Hundreds of thousands of kids crippled and dying every year from polio. We're down now to 3 countries. Nicaragua is back on track again. It was off the list briefly and went back on. It should be fine. But Afghanistan and Pakistan. What a terrible place to have to go to dispense the drops and to immunize kids when even the health workers are sometimes killed in this strange conflict that continues to go on there. But we're getting close. This year to date, 5 cases of polio worldwide. So we've come a long, long way. We've got to get it down to 0, and it's got to stay at 0 for 3 years before we can declare the planet polio free. But this is an amazing thing undertaken by Rotarians in the 80s, having such a huge impact, and that's our foundation and our contributions at work. The second thing the foundation does is Rotary Peace Centers. Relatively new program, it's about a decade old. There are 7 peace and conflict centers in the world that Rotary sponsors, and we send students to them. We've had over 1,000 graduates now, half from a master's program and half from a shorter program in Thailand that is producing peace scholars. Great opportunity for your club. If you've got somebody that you think is engaged in peace, a young professional, somebody with a few years of working experience. We're not looking for brand new college kids, but somebody's got some experience. Nominate them, get them out there. This year we nominated one candidate. I don't know if she's going to win or not. We helped another one out of Boston get into the program, so looking forward to that. I know a number of peace scholars around the world. They're fabulous people, and we're keeping them working in that field. Is the question? Okay. That's correct. Yeah, Carla is a past peace scholar from American University in Japan. She works at the SIT in Brattleboro. Yeah, great resource. Okay, so those peace centers are important. It doesn't cost us anything to nominate candidates, but think how proud you'd be if somebody from right here in this community were able to get that life-changing opportunity and become a peace scholar. The third thing that Rotary Foundation does, and my personal favorite, is it funds clubs just like yours. It helps you to do your projects. It helps you to multiply your money. Now, some clubs say, well, I really want to do my projects right here in town, and the Rotary Foundation doesn't work very well to do local projects. That's only partially correct. But at the same time, as local as clubs are, when you get involved internationally, it becomes a very interesting and exciting thing to do. And so Rotary Global Grants, which enable you to triple your money, the only requirement is that you pair with a club in another country than your own. So Rotary is trying to stimulate peace and understanding between Rotarians and Rotary clubs by incentivizing them to work together. So if your club wanted to do a grant in Honduras, you'd have to get familiar with a Rotary club in Honduras and work with them. Now, most often the money goes from the have country to the have not country, and that's fairly logical, but that's not the rule. The rule is that your club has to work with a club in another country. Now, sometimes that means the money can come back this way. Okay, and we've had a couple of cases. For example, after Hurricane Katrina, Governor Chris Parkinson got involved with a grant that put about $170,000 into re-equipping a library in Pass Christian, Mississippi, where the money was coming from New Zealand and Taiwan, as well as U.S. clubs. So it was an example of money coming into the U.S. Another example was Irene relief right here in our district. We had about a $400,000 grant where the money came in and did relief work in Vermont and in New Hampshire. So it was an interesting opportunity. Now, to put some of this in a context, how much do you think your club has given to the Rotary Foundation since its inception? Thousands? Yeah, absolutely. It's actually $111,000. Thank you so much. Amongst you and your predecessors and your friends and everybody who's contributed, $111,000 has gone to these worthy causes. I thank you and I congratulate you. That's just wonderful. Now, I've only been foundation chair for the past 4 years, and I haven't dug through all of the past records, but the easy part is right up front. In the 4 years that I've been here, your club has participated in 3 different Rotary Foundation projects. And by doing that, you have received $31,500 to support programs that your club was executing. That's like a third of your money back in 4 years just to support your programs. And those programs were, you did a district grant and you received $2,500 of district designated funds to help you double the money that you were putting into a local project. So that's a little coming back. Then you got attached to the Guatemala Literacy Project, which is a fantastic project. I forget where it's run out of. It's Indiana, I think. I don't know how you got into it. You must have met Carolyn Johnson from the Seacoast because she's devoting her life to that. You decided to put up $1,000. But as a result of the $1,000 you put up, the Rotary Foundation put $2,500 more in. So that was $3,500. You can imagine the number of students in Guatemala that receive those nice little packets of carefully prepared books that have a life of about 5 years, so that 5 students from each pack of books can get there. That's hundreds of kids educated by your $1,000, which was multiplied by our Rotary Foundation. Now, most recently, you must have been talking to those characters down in Nashua because you decided to be extraordinarily generous, and you put up $10,600 to help support the Guatemala Midwife Program, which Adrian Levesque has just gotten approved a couple, 3 weeks ago. Now, your $10,600 was matched by another $26,500 out of the Rotary Foundation, so that your contribution of $37,100 was made possible by putting up the original $10,000. That's amplifying your money. That's taking the products of your hearts from what you wanted to do and working with Adrian and getting that done. So that's what the foundation does. Now you have a Peace Corps gentleman here, spent some time in Africa. That might be an excuse to do a grant. To my knowledge, your club hasn't actually managed a global grant. Something to think about. They are a lot of work. Clubs typically don't do them because A, it's a lot of work, and B, how do I find a club in Chad to work with? Well, that's my job. My job is to help you get over the hurdles of getting that done, and that's that best job in Rotary, because that's 20 projects that I've helped clubs get involved with, and there's a whole lot more in other districts that we're playing with. It's really great. And you do that all through your contributions. So when you decide that you'd like to become a Paul Harris Fellow and contribute some money, that's going into that pot, and that's building up. We have an almost $1 billion permanent fund that helps to keep all of this going through the peaks and valleys of our economies. Paul Harris Society is when you get this ugly little dongle thing that hangs here. That means that you've made a commitment to give $1,000 a year to the Rotary Foundation. We have quite a few people in our district that do that, and about 35% of the funding for the Rotary Foundation comes from Paul Harris Fellows who do that. And you can keep working on up from there, but it's not a matter of what you can afford or what you want to do. It's a matter of what does it do for you and like-minded people in 35,000 Rotary clubs all over the world. So I'm a Rotary Foundation junkie. Janet and I give to it regularly, and we benefit from it far more than what we give, because all of these programs and things that we get to do are just totally fascinating, and it's all about Rotarians. So the two are quite linked. Any questions or thoughts or needs on foundation topic while you got me?
Well, a lot of the guys in the club now really weren't here when we had a project in Honduras.
Okay.
San Pedro Sula. After they had a huge hurricane.
Yeah, Hurricane Mitch.
Yeah, and we went down there, and I don't know how many of us went down, but we went down 2 different years and helped out the old hospitals in San Pedro Sula. Took down X-ray machines.
Okay.
Quite an effort, and I think we did at that time multiply our contributions for that particular.
I'd have to look into that one and see. I wasn't familiar with the San Pedro Sula part. I know our district has gone to Don Lee many times since Mitch, the same issue. So you must know Tony Medina from San Pedro, their foundation chair.
Yeah. He was very familiar. have
Okay.
3 Rotary clubs in San Pedro Sur. And we work with all 3.
Very good. Very good. Yeah, our district has done a lot in Central America. We've done El Salvador, Nicaragua, and mostly Honduras, and Haiti. Now, someone earlier mentioned Pure Water. Pure Water is actually an independent, a not-for-profit out of Vermont that was founded by the Rotary Club of Brattleboro. And although it's not a Rotary Foundation program per se, it is funded by the Rotary Foundation in many respects. It's received well over $2 million in Rotary Foundation funding. Every club in this district has given something at some point in time to do water projects for which Pure Water was the implementing organization. And we've got 3 ongoing grants right now with them.
Greg Allen from Vermont runs it.
Yeah, Carolyn Crowley Mew. Mhm. Yeah. Okay, other questions or observations? Did I cover what you needed? Okay. E-ray sounds like some kind of a sea creature. Well, the foundation is the other side of my job. Ian Risley's part of raising money. They came up with the idea that if every Rotarian gave $100 every year, we'd have a lot of money. 1.2 million Rotarians. Interesting program. Again, my preference is to teach you what the foundation does. Because as Rotarians, you almost have to have a separate inbox for all of the requests for your money to come floating in. I mean, it's amazing. We all get on everybody's list. And as you're trying to prioritize where you spend your money, you need to know what the foundation does. To me, that's what's important. Whether every Rotarian gives every year, neat goal. Fact is, 34% of Rotarians give in any particular year. So as a fundraiser, going from 34% to 100 is sort of really a stretch goal. And again, I prefer to come in and show you the positive, tangible results, and you can decide if you'd like to be a part of that. So E-ray is just an extension of the, Paul Harris sustaining. Would you give $100 every year or some amount every year? When you get to 1,000, you get a recognition as a Paul Harris Fellow. That's how I got started. I joined the club. Looked down the roster. There were paper rosters in those days. We didn't have the web. A little plus next to some of those names. What the heck's that plus? Oh, they're a Paul Harris Fellow. Well, that's big stuff. I'm a brand new Rotarian. I'm trying to be part of the club. I want to support everything. And I said, well, if that's an expectation, I'll do it. So I managed to find the $1,000. Got a little plus next to my name. I told the foundation chair, I said, forget the badge, and I don't want recognition. He twisted my arm and he said, look, if you're willing to get up in front of the club and let me pin this thing on you, then you're setting an example for others. So that's what the recognition is about. So I kept doing that. This is about Paul Harris plus 100. And I don't usually wear it unless it's something like this, because to me it's not about that. It's about what it does. And so I keep chipping away at it. Yeah. Okay, yeah, that's the funding model the foundation uses. When you give money to the foundation, it puts it into an investment account and earns interest for 3 years. At the end of 3 years, the full corpus of what you gave comes back to be spent. And the money that was earned during those 3 years is used to operate the foundation. So it's basically operating at no load, or at least it appears that way. I mean, obviously there's time value to money, and it costs money to have 100 and some people in Evanston help administer these programs, particularly since it's the only major foundation anywhere that will give grants for $30,000. It takes a lot of effort to manage that, and that's why they've shifted a lot to the district. So I spend a lot of my time managing these grants so that they don't have to do it in Evanston, keep the costs down. But that's the way that works. Now, when that money comes back, let's say you gave $1,000 to the Rotary Foundation. 3 years from now, that $1,000 comes back. 500 goes into the World Fund, and 500 becomes district designated funds. That means it's back to where our district can choose how that money will be spent within the framework of the foundation. And so when you then later decide to do a grant, like your grant for Guatemala literacy, you came up with $1,000 of money, your club did, and contributed to that grant. I took $1,000 of that district designated funds and I matched your $1,000. So you doubled your money because you put in $1,000 and the district put $1,000 of district designated funds on it. Then the Rotary Foundation matched the district's contribution dollar for dollar, so there was another $1,000. And they matched your contribution 50 cents on the dollar, so there's another $500. And that's why your gift of $1,000 into the project resulted in $3,500 total dollars being given because of that money that flowed back. That's kind of the mechanics. Troy, do you have a...
We committed over 3 years to participate in the district-wide job on the Pure Water project. Just hoping you can give us an update on how that's progressed.
Okay, that grant is in submitted status. Doug Rupert, who runs that from the Milford Club, just got an email about this long of little things to have to fix up. They've changed the grant manager there, and she had some new wrinkles. So I'm sure he's grumbling a little bit, but it should shortly be solved. I'm sure it'll be approved. So it's fully funded. It's been submitted. As soon as you resolve those little difficulties, which I think are all simple, it should be ongoing. That's the third one Doug has covered. He did one on his own, the Rotary Club of Milford, 6, 7 years ago. Well, it was during my reign, so it had to be 4 years ago. Decided they wanted to put $5,000 in and get one started. That's where Doug cut his teeth on running these grants. And he's one of our best grant writers and managers. He does a great job. But they did a $170,000 grant in Trojes, Honduras, dealing with several hundred families were taken care of. Then he got many clubs in this district to give to one that was managed out of Bozeman, Montana. The club there took the lead. We funded, I don't know, 35,000 of it. And that's doing another one also in Trojes. This year, Governor Dennis turned on the one in Darbonne. Should be an excellent grant. All three of those involve Pure Water as the cooperating organization that does the work, funded by a Rotary Foundation grant because Rotary Club said we want to do that. So it's a great example of how that money comes back to us.
I've always had it in mind that adding to clubs' donation springs from the judgment of that club, where the club has considered the importance of that particular project and has contributed to it, so that the club's judgment is considered in adding to what they have done. So it's very important for a club to exercise our judgment in terms of what's needed. And then it multiplies from there.
Yeah. Well, a couple of times a year I do grant seminars to help clubs understand the details of doing these grants. And one of the key things that the foundation asks us to do is needs assessments. Because so often a club will start off with the best of intentions. Oh, I want to go and give them shoes. And it turns out they really needed something different. And so doing a community needs assessment and being sure that what you're doing is what they really need in the area is very important. Part of the process.
Is there some central, like, I don't know, where you can see all the different projects and all the different clubs throughout the world, and then you can look at it and say, well, this one is something that kind of goes with any thought, and you'd like to participate in that?
Well, there's a variety of ways. Rotary Club Central is trying to get every club to put up what they're doing and getting up there. And it's been a long, slow process. It's been 4 or 5 years since they set that up. Clubs just like yours, your incoming president is encouraged to go and post what your club's doing, what you're looking for. And that's a place you can go and look. There's another place called matchinggrants.org. It's It's run by a past district governor from San Diego, and he keeps book on all sorts of grants. So when my club decided for the first time a couple of years ago to try to do a grant, they said, well, what do we do? Where do we go? I said, well, start with matchinggrants.org. They went on and they found a couple of grants that a club in Mexico wanted to do that kind of appealed to them. So they started having Skype calls with Mexico. The club's secretary is a Frenchman who used to be in a club in Geneva, who's now married to a gal down there. Well, they had this great project. We bonded with them. That grant is almost completed now. A lot of clubs in this district helped support it, but great project. So that particular website, matchinggrants.org, has got a whole list of grants seeking funding. If your club was doing one, I'd recommend you post it there, because that's where other clubs will see it and what have you. Because like I say, the foundation is trying to incentivize two clubs working together. Quite often there are several clubs. Okay, I've done grants in Turkey where we had clubs from Italy helping support that. Just all kinds of mixes and matches. And that's what's exciting. And pretty soon you've got lifelong friends in these other countries. You've really got to improve worldview when you learn to work with other people.
Got time for one more question?
More of an observation than a question. I really enjoyed your presentation on the topic of when did you become a Rotarian and the difference between being a member and someone that really truly gets it. And I wanted to thank you for that explanation. It's going to leave me thinking about some things. And I'm always tempted to say, well, tell me your story about when did you become a Rotarian, but I think that after sitting here for a minute thinking about it, it's probably not for each one of us as an individual to decide whether we got it or whether when that happened, as much as it is to just let our actions speak for ourselves. But thank you for that.
Okay. Well, I encourage you to think about your Rotary experience, because Rotary is really about stories. Now, I borrowed that one from Cliff Docterman, who is an unbelievable storyteller. But you try to build your own stories. I got several that, and the closer they are to firsthand experience, the better. Because when your club is looking to fill a few vacant minutes sometime, and you've taken an experience that really moved you. For example, you could take the San Pedro Sula experience and kind of pick that apart and craft it like a storyteller a little bit and stand up at the mic and tell it, because that's part of your club's history. That's part of what was moving for you and the people that were involved. And the people now who are looking to move forward can learn from that. And you polish that up a little bit. It's like family stories. They get a life of their own over the years, but that's what keeps our families moving and knit together. So, treasure your Rotary stories, polish them up, and tell them with relish, because that's what makes our organization great.
Okay, thank you very much, Rick. Before you guys leave, thank you. I'd like to thank you for putting a plug in. Heather, you brought in the judges.
Who would like to take our jar?
Who would like to, there we go. And please grab the proposed membership forms that Troy put out. Grab one. Troy brought them here. Take them with you. You're not there to just stay there.
You just want to take them home.
Thank you very much.
We'll try to